330 volts.
That people are capable of some really amazing things, but also some really terrible things. In our species, we run the gambit from people who are more than willing to run into burning buildings to save people who they've never met before, to people that will go along with horrible genocides like that in World War II and never question their superiors, even though what they know they're doing is wrong. So it's very difficult to tell whether or not human beings are born with this innate predisposition towards good or towards bad, or the situation that a person is in affects them more heavily than what they're raised with. In the 1960s, a researcher was trying to find out how it was that people in World War II were able to do such terrible things and then later say that they were just following orders. His name was Stanley Milgram, and he worked at Yale University.
What is there in human nature that allows an individual to act without any restraints whatsoever, so that he can act inhumanely, harshly, severely, and in no way limited by feelings of compassion or conscience?
He decided to do an experiment in which he would get people from all walks of life and have them take part in this experiment about obedience. He was studying whether or not people were willing to capitulate to the demands of people they thought were more socially dominant than them, and how far they would go. In his experiment, people were told that they would be paid to be part of an experiment on human memory. And they were matched up with someone else who they thought was also subject, but was actually a researcher in disguise. They were randomly assigned positions, or so they thought, and the person who was being tested was, of course, always the one who had to deliver electric shocks. These electric shocks were supposed to help the memory of the person in the test, but they were actually to see how far that person was willing to go when they were told what to do by a superior. In this test, they went from a range of very small shocks to incredibly dangerous and large shocks, and 65% of the people in the test were willing to deliver the most dangerous shocks repeatedly, even after the person who they were researching on said things like, "No, stop," or "I don't want to do this anymore, let me out of here." The people who they were delivering these supposed electric shocks to were actually actors, but the people who were delivering them had no way of knowing this.
So, get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now. Get me out of here, please. My heart's starting to bother me. I refuse to go on. Let me...
Stanley Milgram was amazed at these results and wanted to study more. So he did different studies and different experiments where the proximity of the researcher was changed and the location was changed. And he found that the more prestige could be attached to the position and power, the much more likely someone was to follow their demands. It was amazing how people would willingly push people's hands onto shock plates, even though they said they didn't want to do what they were doing. And these were normal, everyday people.
But he kept insisting. I told him no, but he said he's got to keep going. I told him it's time we stopped when we got up to 195, 210 volts. Why didn't you just stop? He wouldn't let me. I wanted to stop.
Stanley Milgram figured out that people will do terrible things when they're compelled by someone that they think is more knowledgeable than they are and in a greater position of power. He found out that the more that people can blame someone else for what they're doing, the more likely they are to go along and do something that they would never normally do. Thank you very much. That's all for this video.
In this setting, I willingly expose my throat to a man with a razor blade.